Okay, I think if I make a start, I'm sure if anyone else is joining, they'll join in time for the important bit, which is you, Scott. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you, Lisa, yeah.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in this Christmas week where everyone's probably pretty busy. Really excited to be able to bring you this webinar. We really want to do this before the Christmas break, talking about the Qlik capacity model, something that has come out this year. And I know we've got, some people on the call who are customers that we've had conversations with about this, and others who, just want to find out more, which is great. So just a little bit on me. My name's Lisa Donoghue. I'm the Data and Analytics Account Director here at Cybit. So I run the sales team, and we've got the delight of having some of the team on this call, but also Scott, who is Qlik Pre-Sales Solution Architect, UK and Ireland in his short title, who we work with Scott a lot, and we really are excited to run through and help you understand where this capacity model may be able to help your business. Scott, your most important technical thing of the day to move me on to my next slide. Thank you. So just quick agenda. So a quick introduction to Cybit. Then we're going to kind of go back to kind of why an organization would need analytics, why we think Qlik is a good choice. Now, apologies, I know some of the people on the call have already got Qlik, but others haven't, so we thought it was worth going through that. And then we will go into a little bit more about the new capacity model and why that might be a good fit for your business. Q&As, please drop those throughout the webinar, and Thomas will keep an eye on those. And also importantly, there's a prize draw for a £50 Amazon gift card at the end, because it is Christmas after all. Hey, Scott, next one. So just a little about Cybit. So Cybit is really 3 pillars of an organization. We are managed services, data analytics, and cybersecurity services. Today, we're talking specifically about the data analytics part of the business, but we do managed services. So consultancy, we do a lot in terms of moving organizations to the cloud, also on-premise IT infrastructure and support. And we deal with a lot of organizations and basically provide their IT support services. Then from the data and analytics side, which is where my team sits, so a lot of what we do have a team of consultants. So we work to a large extent with Qlik and other vendors that you can also see on there. But our job really, where we add value, is helping you work out the best way to go licenses wise, which is cost effective for the business, but then helping you implement whatever you need to implement. Be that sometimes that might be team augmentation, be that doing something like a health check or an overview to give you some recommendations in what you as an organization can go and do yourselves. And also right down to things like managed analytics, which is where, like on a managed services side in IT, we basically provide that backup to manage that analytics estate for you if you don't have the manpower internally to do so. And then on the cybersecurity side, we deal with a lot of large organizations from our side of the business, which is based over in Belfast, basically doing some really high level of cybersecurity, but also that is another area, particularly if you have, concerns about things like going to the cloud, where we have some really great expertise in there to make you reassure you in terms of where your data lives and that it's secure. Next one, thanks, Scott. Just to, because we can't do a presentation from a salesperson without sticking one of these in. So just really flashing up there quickly for you some of the customers that we do work with in the data and analytics side. As you can see, it's quite a wide mix, but we have worked with some of these organizations for a very long time with Qlik. We've been a Qlik partner for 13 years. And we've got some really strong relationships. Some of these customers here have been with us for pretty much the entirety of that journey. And, we have some great customer advocates. And if there's anyone on the call who did want to, chat to any of these organizations or any other customers to understand how they work with us and what we do, obviously, we'd be more than happy to facilitate that. And just finally, thanks, Scott. Yes, so as I mentioned, we do offer free data and analytics health check. If you want to kind of review, you're not sure what is right for your business, we're here to help and we can do that for you. And there on the other side, just my contact details. If anyone wants to get in touch, it'd be great to hear from you. And I really hope you enjoy the session. And obviously, if there's any questions and answers you don't want to raise or you think of afterwards, we will be recording. But, you know, if you think of anything afterwards or you want to rewatch or whatever, just give me a shout and we shall facilitate that for you. And now over to the main man. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Lisa. So good morning, everybody. Just a little bit about myself. So I am part of the pre-sales team at Qlik. I get involved with customers. I do a lot of work with partner enablement as well. And today I'm going to talk about a little bit about why do we need analytics, why Qlik, and then I'll go on to, as Lisa has outlined, talk about the potential opportunities around the recently launched capacity model on there as well. Just a little bit of background about myself. I've been at Qlik for just coming up to 12 years now. So I've seen quite a lot of evolution as we've moved through Qlik. And what I'm going to talk about in terms of the agenda today, I'll go through this. Probably there's about 35 minutes worth of content on this. If you do want to ask questions, there is a Q&A panel that you can access in the session. What I will do is try and pause at various sections in this and just check in with Thomas, just because he's moderating the Q&A panel, to see if there is any questions that have actually come through on there. But I'm going to talk about a little bit about starting from where you are now and the question of what I need analytics. I'll talk about some of the things that I've observed happening in organizations and businesses around the use of data, and specifically some of the behavior patterns that they do. And it's kind of consistent across a whole range and a profile of customers as well. Then what I'll do is drop into the kind of problems and challenges, and then we'll go into some of the kind of practicalities of this and what Qlik can do to really speed up that insight into data and the value you can actually extract from data through understanding it, creating content, and then actually looking to share that as well. And then what I'll do is just go into the kind of why Qlik angle of this and what is the opportunity with the capacity model and some of the new things that the capacity model enables for us that possibly weren't always open to us before in some of the previous licensing models that we've actually had in the marketplace. Okay, so starting a little bit from where are you now, and I need analytics as a question. Well, I'm going to when we were preparing for this session, we looked at it and thought, well, there's going to be lots of different types of organizations on here, and you probably fall into one of these categories. But the thing that categorizes this is that you'll all probably have similar challenges, and I put probably in brackets there because you probably will have challenges. So you may be an organization that doesn't have an analytics platform, but you do lots in Excel, right? Excel is the world's biggest BI tool, and I'm going to talk about some of the challenges associated with that. It might be that you actually have an analytics tool already, but not everybody has that available to them. Now, there can be a whole host of reasons for this. It can be the fact that maybe there's a limited amount of licenses that you actually have for that tool, so you don't get access to it. It might be that you do actually have a license for that tool, but you're dependent on somebody else to do something in there. Or it might be just that that tool is potentially too complex for people to engage with and to use as well. So it covers a kind of multitude of different areas there. And one that we come across a lot as well is that we hear a lot of organizations say something along the lines of, well, we've already got Power BI and it's free, and we're going to go with that. We're going to use that. Okay, I can understand why people do that, because Power BI itself, actually, you can get through the Windows Start button in most organizations, unless they've locked down the App Store. And if you've got anything like an Office 365 subscription, then you get access to it. However, the kind of couple of challenges with that is actually it's not really free as soon as you start getting beyond just doing the fairly simple things and just using it as your kind of own kind of scratch pad dashboard to use. It actually starts costing, and it can actually ramp up in cost quite significantly and quite substantially. And also, it's not always easy to do things in it as well. If you start getting some of the more complex things, there's some things that just can't do. But we'll leave that one. If we get on to the final category, it may well be that some of you on the call are actually already users of Qlik. Now, we as Lisa mentioned, a lot of the customers that Cybit have worked with have been long-term customers. But there's a couple of things with that. If you've got Qlik, what happens is it might be that it's now quite aged. It's possibly you might be struggling with user adoption because you've got to keep onboarding people as people join the organization and transition through the organization as well. So let's step forward into some of the problems and challenges that you see. Now, I'm going to start this, and actually the basis of this presentation was done with an existing customer of Qlik who had a wide brace of Qlik licenses available to them. But some of the behaviors of the organization was, well, why don't we just do that in Excel? Because it's quick and it's easy. But actually what we find with that is actually with Excel or even PBIX files, which for anybody who doesn't know is Power BI files, is it can be a little bit of the Wild West out there. Because in terms of the kind of flow of this, you're given a set of files, you need to understand them, you need to be able to communicate this and demonstrate the insight that you can get and the value to your internal customers, your internal clients. And so surely the answer to this is Excel. Well, actually, is it? Not really sure on that. There's what other options are there. So you kind of boil it right the way back. And we did this with this large insurance organization as well, is what we started talking about was, well, what are the kind of 10 things that you want to do? And what we did with this is quite an eye challenge, right? And this breaks the kind of usual kind of accepted guidelines of website design, presentations, and everything else that the human brain can't really cope with more than 5 to 7 things. So what I've done is just bucket these a little bit. Now I break the top 10 actions into, they're all valid, by the way, the top 10 actions, but if you break it down, the first thing you're likely to do when you've got a set of data is you want to understand the profile of that data. You want to have a look at the quality of it. You want to see the scope and the kind of width and variety of the data. Then what you might want to do is you might want to process that data a little bit. What you might want to do is do some data cleansing. All data comes with problems and effectively dirty data in there. You might want to standardize some of the fields. You might want to create some new fields that are particularly relevant to you and your set of cohorts and people who work on the data on there. And you also might want to combine this data with other data sets as well. That's where real value actually starts. Really, when you do analytics, is combining different data sources together. And then you want to think about, how do I actually create some content and make this actual meaningful and allow people to engage with it, to understand it, and to start making decisions on it as well. Then the final piece is you get this brilliant piece of work and you're really happy with it. You want to then start sharing this, and you want to share this with, I've used the term client, but it's people within your organizations. It can be your colleagues, it can be other parts of your business. And that's where you start to get value, when you all start talking on the same set of data, understanding it, sharing it, understanding the problems that actually go with it as well. So I've now gone with my color coordination and kind of breaking these down into sets into something that we can all manage. So we can check data, we can manipulate data, we can create content, and then we can get on to sharing it as well. And what I'm going to do is just step through a little bit of what you might do with this. And if you think about the premise that I've started with this one, is that understanding your data, the first thing you're going to want to do is check your data, to have a look at it, to just get hands-on with the data. And generally, this is normally done in Excel, right? But I'm going to suggest a slightly different way. So if we just look at these first 2 bullet points on the top 10, is I want to check the data. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop into my SaaS client here. And what it's going to do is drop me into a space, which is an area where I can share and collaborate things. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to add some data to this. Okay, so I just want to upload a data set onto this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload some files. And what I'm going to do is, if I just show you the files that I've got here. So I've got a couple of files there I just want to drop in. So I'm going to drop in my customers file, and I'm going to drop in the sales data full file. A couple of things with this, different formats. Okay, QBD is a very Qlik specific format, but it could be something else like a text file, could be an HTML file, a JSON file, could be a Parquet file. And what I'm going to do is just drop those to there. I'm just going to drop them in, and I'm just going to upload those. So the first thing I said about this was that we're actually going to just check our data on there. So if I just reload that page on there, just what I should have now is there's the 2 files that I've just uploaded on there. Okay. And what I can do with this is when I check data files, what I want to do is start understanding some of the things in there. What's the quality of the data? What's the range of data that's in there? What are the things that I actually see within the data? Can I start to see whether, you know, values are empty, whether they're zero values, whether they're null values, i.e. just entirely blank? And what I start to get here is I start to get a view of some of the cards and some of the things that are actually in there. Now, if I want to go to a more detailed level, I can start looking at the fields here. Now, on this data set, I've got orders, I've got products, and I've got supplier data. Okay, if I just look at the order data on here, it's already given me some information on this. You can see the various fields, you can see the type of field it is, you can see the number of distinct values on there. And the first piece of value on here is for 121 of these orders, I've not actually got any data relating to order date, customer ID, employee ID. So I've got things missing from there. That's not going to help me particularly much. Now, I can see the minimum and maximum values as well. If I hit this little button here, the column picker, this gives me a whole range of things that I drop into Excel to normally do. So I've got the kind of min max, I've got the null values highlighted. I might want to see the median values. I might want to start looking at zero values in there. How many zero values do I actually have? So I just look at that, I can start getting a breakdown of some of these things. So I've got 1,325 zero values there, but actually that's kind of okay because that's the discount field that we can see there. But what I'm saying with this is that just by dropping that data into Qlik, already I've got access to a whole load of information about how this data is profiled, what the makeup of the data is, whether there's null values, zero values. I can also do the same on zero length blank strings and things like that. I can just pick all those things out and start looking and inspecting and getting comfortable with the data set that I've actually got there. So it just allows me to do that really quickly. Now, once I've got the data in there, what I might start to think with this is, well, I want to manage the data. I want to start creating some new fields in there. And there's several options you've got for this. You can do that in Excel. You can use the data pipeline tool. So I know one of the organizations that Lisa flashed up that Cybit work with is Alteryx, the data pipelining tool. You can have people write codes, or you can find what I call your friendly data jockey in your business. So somebody who's really good at kind of manipulating this stuff and uses all kinds of weird and wonderful tools just to do that. Some of which you might have heard of, some of which you might not have. Again, what I'm going to suggest is a slightly different way. And if I look at the objectives when you start getting this, you might want to cleanse the data a little bit. You might want to standardize some of the fields. You might want to create some new fields and group this and derive various things on there as well. Okay, so if I just pop back into my application here. Now, if I just start to work with the sales data full, I've got this big button here which says Create Analytics Application. What I'm going to do is just hit that, and I'm going to call this helpfully webinar demo. I'm creating this in the space that I'm working in. That's something I can actually share with other people as well. I could give it a description, but my typing is rubbish, so I'm just going to not do that. And what it'll do is it will load the data in for me, and it'll load all of the data that's in that particular field. Now you might think, okay, great, so what? But what this does do is this does a couple of things. So when you've got multiple tables, even in a single file like that, you've got orders, products, and suppliers. Now what the data's actually, what the tool's actually done here is the tool has kind of profiled this data and has started to look at it from the point of view of a couple of different things. It's looked at it from the point of view of, well, which fields have the same name, but it's also looked at the strength of relationship between those fields as well. So if I just preview that, it's starting to suggest how I should do what in Qlik terms are called associating the table, which for anybody who's done this before, it's how, for different bits of data, how do they actually associate one field in one table to one field in another table to help you kind of bring these sets of data together. And I can click on the little dot, and what it'll do is say, well, yes, I've joined on product ID, and actually between the orders and product table, that seems like a sensible one and it's common to both. And that little green circle tells me there's a really good intersection on the data it's sampled between there as well. Now, I did mention as well that what I can do is I can actually go a little bit further into this. Now, if I select the orders table, you'll see I've got this little pencil down the bottom here. That's the edit. I can go and have a look at this, and I can decide what I want, to look a little bit further into the data on here. So you can see I've got all the different fields to give me some information about this. Now, if I wanted to look at a couple of things, if I wanted, for example, to look at the sales data, it starts to give me a couple of options there of what I can do. I get the little card there that tells me the kind of min, the max, the median, and the average. So again, all good data profiling information. And then what I can also do as well is I can actually start to create buckets on here. So if I had ranges of what do I think is a large sales order, a small sales order, and a medium sales order, I've got the opportunity to do that inside of the data here, you know, in a fairly simple way. So if I just wanted to make that, for example, let's just make that 3. So I just want 3 buckets. And what I can do is I can slide those along, I can change the size of them, I can change the labels of them and everything else that goes with it. So I can just kind of create buckets within there as well that are appropriate to my business. So I can start to do things like that. Now, the other piece that I might want to do as well, just flipping back to this, is I might want to combine this with other data sets as well. And we'll come on to creating new and derivative fields as well, because that is available to me at the top there. I can add a field and I can create a calculated field on there. That can start to split things and everything else. But if I just want to add some additional data on this, you saw when I loaded this up, there was 2 files. There was the XLS file that I had, which I've loaded in already. But what I can also do is load in data about the customers as well. I'm lacking any customer data at the moment. So if I just do next on there, you'll see it gives me a drop down on there. So what I can do is I can decide which of the fields I want to. I'm quite happy to take all of these, but I can kind of pick and choose which fields I want to load in on there. So if I just load that data in, again, it's just showing you how you can work with and manipulate the data. So it's loaded the customer data in. If I just go back to my associations table on here, as you can see, it's also profiled the relationship between on the recently added customer data. So if I just preview everything now, you'll see I get this nice chart where it's all joined up for me, and it's all there. So what I can decide is, yes, I am going to make sure this works and everything's fine. But what I might want to do, just one thing, I just go and edit the customers file. I did say that we could maybe show you how we could lightly transform the data as well. It might be that what I want to do instead of UK, what I do is just change that to be, for example, United Kingdom. Okay. And I'll just replace that value. You see in the chart over here, it'll refresh that and it'll update the chart, and all of a sudden UK has become United Kingdom. All right, so I've just done a very light transform, and it just allows me to kind of modify and edit that data as well. So I'll just go back to the associations again. I'm going to preview them all, and I'm going to apply them all. And then what I'm going to do is just actually, it's pulled that data in to look at the data, but I'm actually going to just hit the load button and just ask that to refresh. I will just leave that running for a second or two. Now, just get through creating some content, and I'll pause to see if there's any questions there. But creating meaningful content, is this going to be complicated? Well, there's a couple of things that you might want to do with this is you might want to search the data for certain combinations of fields and data and things like that. That's really easy to do inside of Qlik itself. And you want to find a really easy way of actually creating some meaningful visualizations from this as well. So I just flip back. You'll see the data was successfully loaded. We've created the associations there as well. So I'm just going to go to the sheet. I'm going to start creating some content. And what it does is it gives me kind of 3 options to do this. I can explore the data, I can ask a question, or if I'm really comfortable, I can just go and edit the sheet and just start building some content. I actually want to go and just explore the data, and I'm going to show you how quick and simple it is to actually start creating some content for this. Now, there's a few different options for this. So explore the data, I can just kind of pick from the data there, and you see it goes purple for a second. I can ask a question at the top. Or I've got this thing called analysis types, which are a whole series of different analysis. And if I just do view all of them, there's the basic ones there. You know, things like measures, bar charts, maps, breakdowns. But it goes really quite detailed here and has some templated things that will guide you through how to build this. So things like k-means clustering, anomaly detection, period over period comparisons. So it'll do those kind of things should I choose to actually do that. But what I'm going to do is something just really simple, just to create some content. I'm interested in my sales information first and foremost. So I'll just scroll down. I'll just click on sales. What it'll start to do is it'll start to actually suggest some content for me. So I can see here, I've got some sales data there. I've got KPI. I've got a map. I've got sales by country and city, which might be interesting for me. So I'm going to start adding some content. So if I just add that to a sheet, I quite like this one as well. So I'm going to add that to the sheet. And actually my sales over time is quite useful for me as well. I'm just going to add that to the sheet as well. Okay. So I've added 3 items to my new sheet. And if I just click on that, then what you'll see is I've got a chart that starts to work already. Okay, so if I wanted to look at what's going on in Germany, for example, I can start interacting with it. If I want to look at what happened actually in 2019, I can interact with that as well. Now, I can go back and edit this, but I've got some content that's already been created for me. And you can see at the top here, this is kind of the breadcrumbs of what your selections are. So I've got a selection for Germany on there. And, you know, I could drop down further into looking at what the sales are in there if I needed to. Now, I mentioned there was another type of way I can ask a question. You see at the top here, Ask Insight Advisor. Now, I quite like the fact I've got sales by country and city, but I might want to actually see that in a slightly different way. So if I do show me sales by country and city on there, actually my typing's all good. I just asked it a question. Now it's gone away and created a map on there as well. So it started to create some content for me. So I'm just going to add that to the sheet and say, yep. Now, what it's also done is you'll see it's generated some of the charts and graphs for me as well. So I can have sales by country. I can look at the overall, I can look at a Pareto chart, various other things. It's also suggested some existing charts that start to satisfy some of that requirement as well. So because it's got a correlation with sales, it's giving me all those charts that I've clicked on in sales. And it just allows me to kind of see some of that content. But if I go back now and just come out of Insight Advisor, you'll see it's added my chart in there. So if I wanted to, for example, select on Europe now, I can do that. I've got some meaningful content. So that will just drill and that will just flip down to Europe. And you see the countries in there are all European countries. We've lost all the Americas on there from the scope of selection that we've actually got. Okay, so that just allowed me to create some content really quickly. Now we get onto this idea of just, in fact, I'll pause there. I did say I'd pause. Thomas, is there any questions in the chat panel?
None so far, Scott.
Okay.
Everyone's been shy.
I know. Don't be afraid. There's no silly questions. There's only questions. So I'll just go on and just quickly talk about how can I share this content, what options are available. Well, there's a couple of different things. If I wanted to, I just pop back in here. And if I just click on that Sheets button, you'll see I've been working on this privately, right? So this is just in my own workspace. What I can actually do with that is if I just make that public, you'll see anybody who's got access to this application, which is controlled by their user ID and their group permissions, which could come from things like Active Directory or any of the identity providers that you actually use for all your computer systems, they will be able to access this new sheet. There's a few other things that I can do as well. I can actually subscribe to this sheet. So what that allows me to do is that allows me to, if I just want to look at and call this my sales dashboard, what I can do is set this up to, I can put a description in there. I can deliver this as a PDF or as a PowerPoint to myself. And if I had multiple sheets, I can include multiple sheets in there. And I can schedule this to be delivered at the time I choose. So maybe I want this on a weekly basis, and I want this, you know, run on only on a Monday. I just want to see my sales for the previous week. And there we go. That'll run on Monday. And I can also add users to this. Now, I have actually, well, I haven't tested this, but this will be a check. I can add a colleague in, and that's fine. If I try to add another colleague who's not got access to this, I can do that. But what I'll find is it'll tell me that they don't actually have access to this, so they won't be added to the subscription. So I can actually send this to colleagues of mine that actually have access to this. So I'll just clean that up. And if I hit subscribe, that'll deliver that to me, but also to David as well. So that allows me to just share that content on there as well. I'm just going to discard that. The other thing I can do is if I wanted to, I could also do right click on here, and I've got the ability to set alerts. Okay. And what's the alert? I'll just talk about this. An alert is you can trigger this to look at the data on a schedule that you choose when fresh data arrives or on a periodic basis, like I did with a scheduled report. You could just decide to be notified by email, and also you'll be notified whenever you log into the Qlik tenant on this. It's just a really good way of just setting up conditions, setting up business rules, and just being notified about that at a subsequent time later on. Okay. If I wanted to, if this chart also, I can actually subscribe to this in a slightly different way. Sorry, actually, let me just do that. I can monitor this in the hub. So I can create this so I just have that individual chart item sat in my own personal space. So I can actually see that anytime I come into the system, just the chart itself. I can actually consume smaller components of the application as well. And other people can do that, curate content for themselves. Now, the one other piece that I just wanted to add on this as well, just before I kind of jump towards a little bit about the capacity model and some of the benefits on there as well, is that what I want to do, let me just find where it is, it's there, is that also I have the ability to put that application content inside of Teams, okay? This is my live Teams thing. So if I wanted to do, show me, for example, show me sales by city and country. This is a slightly different system than I'd set up previously, but what it will do is it will then actually go away, take this question, and our IT systems, I got blocked from this earlier in the week because they put some additional security on there for the app in Teams. It takes about 10 or 12 seconds just to respond now, but you can see I've asked a question in Teams, and it comes back with the same content that I've got and a little bit of information about the highest sales is 201,000 in Germany in a city called Grunewald. What I can do is explore that further, and what that will do is drop me back into the application on there, open it up in context of the question that I've actually asked on there as well. And you can see I get the content very similar to what I had before. So it's just a different way of sharing it. You can actually put Qlik content and allow it to be accessed via Teams. Again, it is based on the user's identity and that particular team and the scope of the information that actually comes back from there as well. But hopefully that just gives you a little bit of a feel for the kind of top 10 objectives on there as well. That what you did, you know, in about 20 minutes or so, what we've done is just loaded some data in, looked at it, understood some of the profile and content on there. We've manipulated a little bit. And we created some content pretty quickly. And actually, we've been able to share that content in various shapes and forms, not just in the Analytics Hub itself, but in the form of reports being delivered to me in PowerPoint every week, or alerts delivered to me when certain conditions are met. Or if I want to, I can publish this and surface this through a collaboration tool, in this case, Teams. So you've seen all of those things on there as well. So just a little bit of a thought on this is kind of the why do I need analytics? Well, Excel is really the Wild West. And the reason I say this is I've seen so many instances of it where the data kind of goes out of a control structure if you put it in Excel, and to a degree, also if you put it in Power BI as a PBIX file, because people can, and I've double quoted this, refine the data. Okay, what does that mean? You can put your own definition on what is our margin, what is our head count, all sorts of things that get manipulated just to kind of tell a better story on there as well. But if you're using Excel, the thing is it's error prone, copy and paste of calculations, all sorts of things like that. If you get different data sets and somebody's just added an extra column in, it'll break down. It's not an ideal way of doing it. It can also be quite complex and manually intense. If you nest a whole load of Excels, it can be quite difficult. And actually the output from Excel tends to be a single static image if you end up using that, which can have value, but it doesn't allow you to interact with the data. It doesn't allow you to drill into it. It doesn't allow you to find out, you know, to tune in to find out what the real issue is in the data on there as well. Okay. So I'll just talk about a little bit about the opportunities here. Well, we introduced the analytic capacity model, and it's a concept that's quite new. It's based, broadly speaking, on the data analyzed, so how much data we've actually got under analysis, and not entirely on the number of users consuming it. So we've got three different types of model here. I'm going to kind of discount standard because I think that what will happen with standard, and I put at the moment there is, I think standard will be replaced with probably a slightly lower entry point to premium. But what does premium give you? Well, in the magenta big letters at the top there, unlimited basic users. Okay, so what does that mean? We're not limiting the amount of users that you send give access to the analytics platform under this licensing model. we're licensing it on the data analyzed, and under premium, what we call full users. So these are content creators. We did quite an extensive survey of the marketplace, and the feedback that we got from the marketplace was that typically the profile is that you'll have a small number of consumers. I spoke on a customer call yesterday with one well-known leisure company, and what they said was, yeah, they've got about 10 to 15 content creators, and they've got a couple of hundred people who consume the reports. That's not unusual. It's generally kind of those kind of profiles. It's generally about, you know, sort of somewhere between, in larger organizations, it kind of goes down to 2 or 3% of people need to create content, and the rest of the 95%, 97% will just consume that content. So that's the kind of one of the opportunities with premium. I'll talk a little bit about some of the additional capabilities that are in there just outside of the analytics, application automation, automated machine learning, and some of the benefits of SaaS in a moment. But that's basically the structure of the licensing model. Now, what we did do, if you compare and contrast that previously, is that previously the license metrics have been based on user metrics, and generally there was two types of this. There was a professional user license, which is akin to a full user, and an analyzer user who was pretty much a content reader. There was a couple of things that they could do that the basic user can't, but that relates to a few things that are under review anyway. But a basic user allows you to open an application to create some of your own content, like notes and bookmarks within that application, and then basically interact and drill down to what you need to find out from within there as well. And you can also use the natural language query that you saw me use in Teams as well. So capacity, why did we think this was a good idea after the survey that we did, and what are the underlying things that we want to do? Well, it's only available on the SaaS-based platform. And there's a couple of things that we want to do. We want to democratize the data, i.e. get the data out to as many people as possible. The SaaS platform allows us to be scalable. So that unlimited number of users, if you were running that on your own premise, you would need to provision hardware contingent with how much you want to actually, how many users you want to serve on there. And fair pricing is always going to be a debate, but I think this genuinely represents a fair pricing. And I'll give a couple of examples to explain that as well. So I talked about what I think the advantages are. Watch out for a couple of things. Does the model fit your requirement? So what I will say about the capacity model, and we still have the, excuse me, the user-based model as well. If you're an organization that has massive volumes of data, so if you're using very heavy, for example, Internet of Thing type applications, where you generate and analyze huge volumes of data for a small amount of users, this is not the model for you. Okay, in general terms, the general analytics flow, this model will fit most requirements. And what it kind of positively encourages and allows people to thrive with this is that we're not constraining the amount of people that can actually consume that information. Second thing to watch out for, excuse me a second, is are there any blockers to adopting a SaaS platform? Generally, a couple of things. I'll talk about this at the in the last couple of slides, but generally what we find with this is people say, well, I can't go to SaaS because it's a legal requirement because our data's got to stay in the UK. Well, a couple of things on that. One, we do have a UK tenant, which has been launched now. Secondly, when we had what was the European tenant, which was based in Dublin, it wasn't necessarily a legal requirement. I would accept if it was an operational governance decision not to let the data leave the country. But with things like GDPR equivalency between the EU and UK governments, it was never, ever a legal requirement. So I used to have a lot of fun with some customers who said, oh, legally, we can't do that. Yeah, legally, you can. Operationally, I accept you can't. But other things on there, we have data on premise. Well, we have a very strong capability to be able to safely and securely access that data from a SaaS platform using things like the direct access gateway, data movement gateway, and that allows us to go to a whole host of sources. In early 2024, this is a future piece, so please don't make a buying decision on this. We will add other capabilities, the ability to open file-based sources and REST kind of application interface sources behind the firewall as well. And that is very much on the roadmap on there as well. Other thing to watch out for, I've put it here as bad practices. This is where Cybit can really help you is just be careful how you load the data into the system. If you load it in once, store it, and then reuse it lots of times, that is really good practice on there. If you load it into several different applications through, the same data several times through just individual applications tapping into a source, whether that's on-premise or cloud-based source or whatever, something that's not in Qlik Cloud, then that can become quite punishing. So just if you implement, the second point on the recommend is implement good data practices. So bring the data into Qlik, store it on Qlik Cloud, use it there, use it many times, and you can have thousands of applications running off it. The other piece I would say is just understand the growth pattern. And I'm going to talk about this in a second, just in terms of an imaginary customer. So I mentioned there's 3 different types of models. I'm just going to discount standard. Enterprise is exactly what it says. It's for the larger enterprise customers. But the one I want to call your eye to, and I'm going to explain the graphic as well, even though I've put a little bit of a legend on the side here, but on premium, let's consider this customer. They've got 49 gigabytes worth of data. They've got 10 full users and 50 consumer users. I picked this because it perfectly balances between the magenta dot, which is the professional analyzer model, what it would cost in that, and for the capacity pricing model based on premium as well. Okay, so they're absolutely perfectly aligned. Now, the opportunity for this is if you had a massive expansion of consumers to 2,000 users, what you see is that little red dot flies out to the right-hand side. Okay, so it goes out there. If you look at the premium costing on there, the premium costing for this is low. Now, ignore that dot there. That is an error I put in the original application. But if you focus on premium, the opportunity is that you can serve effectively those additional 1,950 users as a free of charge, as no extra licensing cost there. The base does not necessarily change. Now, if you kind of go to the other side of the looking glass, and if you look at the fact that we expand the data to 201 gigabytes, what you can find is that the professional analyzer model for just those 10 users and 50 consumer users would actually be a lot less. So if you've got lots and lots of data and you're not intending on expanding your user base, this kind of idea of going to the capacity model might not work. However, what we tend to find is when you expand the data, it generally pulls through the user options. So if we reinstate the kind of 2,000 users on there, again, while this premium size has gone up, consequently, the value that you're deriving from this because of the different data aspects that you're looking at, the different parts of your business that can actually use that, we think this still represents that fair value piece on there as well. So these are all illustrative, so they don't include any of the kind of tiered discounts or anything like that. It was just a simple mechanism to say this is what the opportunity is. I'll pause there just before I go into kind of some of the other side opportunities. Any questions, Thomas, at all?
Yes, we had a question from Gary Mitchell. He was asking how many Qlik products have been demonstrated so far, and is this all standard in Qlik Sense Cloud?
Yes, everything I'm showing today is in Qlik Sense Cloud, and there's nothing additional to this. This is just the Qlik Sense Cloud on there. So all of the things in terms of loading the data in, the cataloging of the data, and I'm going to show a couple of other things that are all in the standard Qlik Cloud offering as well in a second as well. So hopefully that answers Gary's question. There's nothing in there that is kind of an additional element at the moment. Okay. Was that the only question in there, Thomas?
No, that's all so far.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so I'll round out. I've got about 5 minutes left, and I realize I've blown my time budget as always, but I will get through this quickly just to show you, so we can take any other questions. What I think the opportunity is, I think the opportunity here is for you to deliver content to an unlimited number of users. These can be internal and external users. There's also the ability to leverage some additional components. So machine learning, workflow integration, business glossary, lineage, and impact analysis. I want to show these very, very quickly. To go to Gary's point, there's a kind of base level of these included in the core SaaS platform. So machine learning is the entry point, which is you can have an unlimited number of machine learning experiments. The data size is limited to 100K cells in the kind of free version on the core platform, and you can deploy 2 machine learning models. There is additional, if you want to kind of deploy more or put larger data sets into machine learning, there is additional kind of add-on options for that. And the workflow integration is something called application automation. I'm going to talk about that, not sure, because I could spend hours talking about this because there's lots you could do with this. But we include 5,000 automation runs per month with the kind of core platform. Glossary, lineage, and impact analysis included in the platform. The other opportunity as well is, which I'll touch on very briefly, is the ability to reduce hardware costs. And these are the kind of classic software as a service benefits. Couple of things with that. One, you can potentially retire some on-premise hardware. The second thing is the cost of actually maintaining that hardware. So operating system upgrades, security patching, just basically anything around security is all kind of outsourced to service on there. So I'm going to quickly go through this. These are the additional contents just to talk a little bit more about this. The machine learning, it's AutoML. We acquired an organization about 4 years ago called Big Squid. This really does provide a very smooth workflow for you to train machine learning models, to customize that machine and basically tweak that machine learning model and then deploy it all in one place. A lot of manual work that's normally done by a data scientist. It does only support quite a narrow set of capabilities, but they're ones that do a lot of the 90% of questions that never get touched by machine learning. Binary classification, is an opportunity going to close or not going to close? Is somebody going to show up for an appointment or not going to show up for an appointment? Multiple or segmentation classification, which one of these product offerings best fits the user I've got? And regression forecasting is fairly simple, but it allows you to project volumes forward in time. So just to show this in a simple example on here, so I've got this in the context of a customer support agent. So if it just pops me into my application here, a couple of different quick flows I'll show on this is that I'm a retention agent in a subscription business. Somebody's called me. We're trying to increase their base fee from $28 to $38. They're on the red plan and they're going to churn. Okay, what can I do? If I move them to $25, will I keep them? It'll go away and it's using a machine learning model. And it's it. Well, actually, yes, if you go to $25, you're actually reducing your revenue off them. So what if I go back to $37, say, for example, but change the plan that they're on? They're going to churn. If I put them to the blue plan, guess what? They're not going to churn. And actually, I've got the potential to go up to, it's only 11% chance they'll churn on the blue plan at $41. So I've got a little bit of scope there. And I'm just using machine learning model from a machine I created off some training data on there. Now, the other piece that I can do is use this on a larger scale environment. So if I went, for example, I know red plan's an issue. So if I just select on the red plan, and if I just say keep them on the red plan, you can see I'm going to lose a lot of people there. They're at $37. If I change them, for example, to the purple plan, what does that mean? It means that I've got a retention that's gone from kind of, I'll just flick back a second, from something like I'm losing about 90% of my people. I'm only retaining 9.7% of them. If I go to the purple plan, I'm retaining 99.3%. And you can actually see that all the 3 accounts in there are ones that you could call out and say these potentially might need special attention if you want to try and do something really specific on there. But that whole idea of kind of using machine learning, just you can apply it to a whole host of simple questions just to augment that decision-making process and embed them in the analytics as well. I did mention the workflow element. So this is also included in the platform. There's 5,000 runs a month included. You can use this for 4 different use cases, broadly speaking. Inside of an analytics application, you could use this to initiate a data-driven workflow. So if you see somebody with a particular issue, you can initiate a trigger that might go out to something like Zendesk, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and just start a remedial action in those platforms. Okay, so it allows us to integrate the Qlik Cloud platform to other SaaS-based platforms as well, or other things like databases, robotic process automation. So we've got integrations in there to things. I'm trying to UI. I forget what it's called. UI Zen, I think it is. I need to double check that. We can also automate. I mentioned databases. We can automate back office flows into other platforms as well. We can use it on Qlik itself to when we have new users, we can add people to that for things like entitlements, give them access to different things. And also what we can do from inside of analytics is we can actually start to distribute some of the content out to other platforms like Slack, MS Teams. You've seen me use Teams to query the platform. We can actually publish content from applications using this application automation flow if a certain set of conditions happen, we could actually trigger some information to flow into Slack or Teams to allow people to see that as well. So a couple of use cases, compel action on there, and just really also help the DevOps cycle inside of Qlik. Now, the other piece, last piece I'm going to talk about in terms of the platform is glossary, lineage, and impact analysis. So I'll just flick into this. This is, again, another application. I'm using a couple of different things here. So I've got, I also want to show this because there's a couple of new things we've just launched in the platform for anybody who's a Qlik user. You can see on here, I've got various show hide conditions. So I can say, well, actually, let's pop up a filter menu and let's just look at, say, for example, a few countries there. So I'll just pick a few countries and then just clean that off as well. I'm just waiting for. It's always, I was doing so well on the demo front right up until that point. There we go. And if I just close that down, the reason for showing this is that we've got KPIs overlaying on each of them. Something anybody who's a QlikView user has wanted in Qlik Sense for a long time. I can actually move that, so I put that KPI up on the top, or I can overlay it back onto the map as well, just to kind of show that capability that's available in the platform, and also the kind of whole show and hide thing that I did on the filters on there as well. But the reason I wanted to show this is on here, and I've got a touchscreen laptop, so it gives me a slightly different interface on there. But I can actually start to look at a couple of things. I can look at dependencies on here. So I want to look at the sales figures. I want to say, well, actually, I want to see the lineage of where this has come from. Now, this is a fairly simple example. It's just coming from a file I've got stored here, which is the workshop file. But I can also look downstream as well. I can say, well, actually, what other applications are dependent on this? And it'll give me a list of the applications that are dependent on that file as well. And if I just flick back as well, the other piece as well, I've got a business glossary definition here. If I just click on there, I can actually take this back and it will take you to a definition that just explains that whole kind of KPI, where it's used, how it's linked, just to allow that adoption. Is it the right field that I'm looking at? Is it the right one that I'm using as well? And the final piece, just so I do give some time for questions, opportunities to manage costs. You can reduce hardware costs by potentially retiring some hardware. If you've got existing Qlik platforms already, if you're in the kind of 0.4 of the list of users on there, you can migrate to the cloud. What you can actually do is you can reload those on premise with QlikView as long as it's April 2020 onwards, or Qlik Sense, which I think is August 2018 onwards. It will be able to reload the cloud, and you can actually run QlikView on the cloud as well. So if I just kind of flick back to this, I've got some QlikView applications on here. I just open the retail store application. You'll see that's very familiar to anybody who's a QlikView user. In the dashboard, I can interact with that. I can say, well, actually, I'm interested in the Nordics, and you can see it's drilled down. If I wanted to look at customer satisfaction in the Nordics, I can see that. It just works as a QlikView application on there as well, and there's all the usual kind of toolbars for that as well. So you can run a QlikView application on the cloud. One final point just before I stop for questions. I get asked a lot of, well, is it secure? Is it safe to put things on the cloud? Well, as Qlik, we hold both ISO 27001, which accredits us for us as a company and how we operate. And we also hold SOC compliance for SOC 1, 2, and 3. SOC 2 is the kind of basic table stakes. SOC 1 means that we are capable of handling financial and personal information on there. We've got processes and procedures and policies for that. And SOC 3 is the fact that we've held that for some years now. And it's evidenced of the fact that we go through that accreditation, that we actually live to that accreditation, and we evidence it every year as well. So it is secure, and there is a whole host of secure information on there as well. And I did promise I'd leave some time for questions, not as long as I thought I would, but apologies, I've talked quite a bit there. So if there's any other questions, more than happy to take those through the chat panel, or however we want to, really.
Thank you so much for that, Scott. You raced through, but you've covered a hell of a lot of content in that time. I don't know, Thomas, are there any other questions in the panel? Has anyone got any they'd like to raise? Maybe stick them in the chat.
No questions so far. If anyone wants to drop one in just now, or forever hold your peace.
Go on, make me sweat a bit. Make me earn my money today.
Yeah. We must have answered everything that everyone was wondering about there, Scott. So doing quite well.
I think the big thing on this is I think there's a couple of opportunities. I think there was a really good question from Gary earlier, is was I showing anything that wasn't in the core platform? Everything I've shown there is core platform today. As I said, for the machine learning and the application automation, there is an amount included with the platform. And if you do start expanding the usage of that, there is kind of scale up tiers available for those if you wanted to deploy more and larger machine learning models, for example. But everything I've shown there is available on the core platform, the whole glossary, lineage, impact analysis. There's lots of other things I didn't show, like, for example, notes. I did show the subscription pieces, which are there. So yeah, there's lots on there that can be used and harnessed, really.
Oh, got a question from Craig.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. So when we say viewers are unlimited of one dashboard, what is the performance limitation? Like 10,000 staff looking at the same dashboard at the same time? Brilliant question, Craig. One of the lovely things about being on the SaaS platform is that we carry that cost for scaling on there. Now, in performance terms, if you've got a dashboard and you want 10,000 staff to look at it, actually from a performance overhead, it's not as heavy as you think it is for us to run that. We scale horizontally. We sit on one well-known cloud one cloud provider, and it allows us to basically scale horizontally. So if you can find 10,000 staff to consume that, yeah, great, let's do that. It will do that, and it will manage that. Yeah, so we do have some very large customers on the SaaS platform already, some quite well-known household names on there. Yeah, and the platform performs. We have what's called an SRE team looking after that, which is scalability, reliability, and engineering, I think it is. But we are monitoring the platform in terms of performance and size on there. But it does horizontally scale up effectively. You're on mute, Lisa.
One kind of additional comment, I suppose, on that, Scott, would be for anyone on the call who either is an existing Qlik user or not a user at all and thinking whether this is the right way for them to go. Obviously, we can look at the data, the amount of data, where it's coming from, and work out whether this model where you fit on that graph that Scott put up earlier with the purple dot and the the green column, to work out if it is good. But the general principles are there, right, Scott? If you've got more consumers and you haven't got absolutely huge amounts of data, then it probably is going to be the most cost effective way to go.
Yeah, and I think there's I know Cybit have got a long history of helping customers work and manage with their data on there as well as a process. So yeah, as I said, it's better to have the conversation just to see if the model fits for you, because I think the opportunity my big point, which I didn't really labor on, was that generally organizations, the value that they get increases when you get more people working with and understanding with the same set of data, because it's consistent. It's not people getting slices of data and then manipulating themselves. So it reduces that kind of need for reconciliation and remediation of data as well.
Yep.
Last call for questions, I think. Thank you for everybody who's attended, by the way.
Yeah, no, thank you, everyone. I know people probably have to go off to other meetings. I don't know, Thomas, do you want to do the draw for the Amazon voucher? We're all waiting with bated breath before.
Yeah, sure, Lisa, I'll do that just now.
Our meal deals.
Yeah, so everybody's email address has been put into a random draw. So if someone can give me the drum roll, please. All right, it's actually Gary. Congrats, Gary.
Oh,
I think
Gary
he's
already
just
dropped
off the
off
call as well, unfortunately.
He's still there. Oh, no problem. Well, good for Gary. I shall let me know, Thomas. I'll drop him an email, or if you want to drop an email, let him know that he's won
that's
the
fine.
draw.
We'll get that sorted. Thanks again, everyone, for joining.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Obviously, the recording will be available, and we'll send that out to everyone who's attended. Have a great Christmas
Brilliant.
as well.
Thank you, Thomas and Lisa, for organising that as well.
Oh, no,
Oh, and
Scott.
thank you, Scott. Much appreciated.
Right.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.